morning. Coming to you live from MILAM. I have today, fresh off the stage at MILAM, Mr. Chris Lowman. Chris, you were just in a conversation on a fireside chat with Director Simmerly with the DLA, right?
That's correct, yeah,
So,
Mark Simmerly, Lieutenant General Mark Simmerly.
That's wonderful. So, you know, you have a storied past in logistics and sustainment for the Department of Defense. So tell us a little bit about your background before we get started so people know how to position you on the map.
Kimberly, thanks so much. So I retired from the department in 2024, September 2024, as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment. So senior logistician for the department, writ large. Spent some time as the Undersecretary of the Army prior to that. And then the previous 36 years was a Department of the Army civilian logistician. So worked both on the acquisition logistics side, designing sustainment strategies, how to integrate things like advanced manufacturing into the sustainment framework that accompanies our key warfighting platforms. And then spent some time over in Afghanistan, sustaining the Ministry of Defense, and Ministry of the Interior, teaching them logistics, the Afghans, that is. Spent some time in Europe as the Chief of Supply and Maintenance. And then spent the rest of my career really in the industrial base. So how to design industrial base capabilities, both organic and commercial, that are responsive to unplanned demand and can react at scale should the nation require it.
Well, that is a wonderful past for us to have the conversation we're going to have today. I think you've seen the progression of additive manufacturing inside the Department of Defense / War. And you've seen that posture shifting over time. You were in fact instrumental in creating a sustainment framework that tried to incorporate additive during your tenure. So now that you're just slightly on the other side of the fence, I know your heart and soul still beats and inside of it. So tell me where you are today with the kind of things you want to see happening.
Great, Kimberly, that's a great question. So, advanced manufacturing is interesting in that it is a technology that historically has been viewed really in the research and development realm, not necessarily in the hard business of sustaining joint forces, both in theater and here in the homeland. And so I've watched advanced manufacturing in its early days producing little plastic chess pieces to now very complex metal components. And so what I am very passionate about is connecting the department's requirements to sustain a joint force in a peer conflict in a contested theater with the capabilities that advanced manufacturing provides, and how we can inject at echelon advanced manufacturing capabilities to generate and regenerate readiness closer to the point of need. And so that's why I'm here at this conference. That's why I did the fireside chat with Lieutenant General Simmerly. DLA is at the forefront of institutionalizing advanced manufacturing. And so the benefits are profound. And what I found is you can't communicate enough about the capabilities that this community has and the challenges that the Department of War possesses, and the risk layer that transcends both of those positions and where we need to break down those barriers. And I used to tell my staff, and I'll share it with you, is in this space you cannot communicate enough. The department needs to be very transparent in its challenges. Industry is going to rally and can solve the challenges. They just have to be aware that those challenges exist.
Well, in your view, where does AM fall down inside the sustainment conversation. How are the systems failing it? How are contracts failing? There's a whole lot of opportunities to be better, but where do you feel the tension is mostly?
Right, that's great. So it's really a classic example of a new technology coming in over the top of a very mature, well-established bureaucracy
Yes.
that is challenged to sustain weapon system platforms that have been procured in every single era of acquisition reform that has existed in my lifetime. And so you're trying to bring AM in on top of things we bought in the 1950s and 60s and things we're buying today in the 20-teens and 2020s. And it's difficult when you're trying to overlay this kind of technology onto an intellectual property schema, right, that wasn't built to accommodate this kind of flexibility and this kind of innovation. And so one thing I think the department really needs to focus on, and to some degree this industry, is how do I integrate advanced manufacturing technologies into the initial lifecycle sustainment planning effort that occurs before we even produce the first asset. Because advanced manufacturing changes the way in which we design repair concepts. It changes the way in which we provision, rather than provisioning completed finished parts. Perhaps the department needs to provision at echelon the raw materials and a printer, right? Yeah. And so planning for that and designing an intellectual property strategy that allows the necessary access to those production files at echelon is a critical area. And frankly, the department still buys intellectual property in the same way we bought it in the 1970s.
Yes, yes.
Very inflexible.
Yeah.
And we need to treat it, I think, more like the music industry, where a radio station plays a song and it pays the artist 10 cents every time it's played, creating a revenue stream for the artist. We need to treat intellectual property the same way. And so what the department needs to do is design intellectual property acquisition strategies that allow for royalties. It allows for access and access fees, and it allows for the generation of a revenue stream for intellectual property owners so that we can reduce the protectionist barriers.
You know, the right to repair issue, which is what you're describing, was included in the National Defense Authorization Act initially, the first draft, and then when we saw the final come out, that language was largely stripped from what Congress had intended. And I think some of the provisions you're describing, we've got to find a way to make that happen immediately, because it has become a recalcitrant barrier where everyone goes to their sides, and in the end, the warfighter loses.
Yeah, Kimberly, I follow that debate. It's something I'm really passionate about.
Yes, yes.
And what I will tell you, the messaging, I think on both sides was wrong.
Yes.
And it really created some defensive barriers. And the way I would have described it is the department needs flexibility to evolve sustainment strategies over time as the national security environment changes. That does not mean that the department will reach in and take your intellectual property, right? That is you've capital investment, real investment in that intellectual property. That's why I'll reflect back to this intellectual property strategy. You have to have an ability to, within a competitive environment, to price, access, options to intellectual property that can be exercised over time. And industry has to recognize that they are a partner in this. And while industry absolutely deserves a profit margin on intellectual property, they took the risk in creating it and incurred the expense. It needs to be reasonably priced, because the department's going to be in this sustainment game for large capital investments We own these assets and these fleets for a very long time. And so competitively priced access provision that can be exercised when the department needs it, I think reduces the defensive nature of the conversation.
I think we have to become on the same team and on the same side of this.
I agree.
And wrestle with the devilish details. Mm-hmm. And you've given us some great ideas here. So at America Makes, we are trying to support our members, which include the government as well as the large primes, as yes. well as all of the small businesses. So it's a tightrope that we have to walk, but I mean, we're ready to wade into this discussion because it's critical to advance the state of additive manufacturing, especially for sustainment. And when we see that as necessary. So I'm going to give you sort of the magic wand question because you do have so much incredible insight into what we need to be doing in this moment as we prepare for potential conflict or at least get ourselves more ready. What do you think we as a community of practice ought to be doing and prioritizing at this moment?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, we talked a little bit earlier about the need to over-communicate. And so in this space, I don't think the industry and your coalition of advanced manufacturing members of MILAM can really communicate enough, both with the department in terms of the capabilities that you have, what you're willing to do in terms of part qualification, in terms of reverse engineering yes. and where those capabilities are, and your willingness to identify members that will accept a large variety of demand patterns with small episodic quantities. Because what's not widely understood is because the department owns fleets of equipment for really long periods of time, in many cases they have metal wear and metal failure patterns that are really low quantity and episodic, so maybe 100 every 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Doesn't fit a traditional manufacturing mold,
no.
But it does fit the advanced manufacturing market, where you have an ability to rapidly change between product lines, produce smaller lot quantities. I know that's not the desire, right? But putting a portfolio together with thousands of episodically demanded parts, 100 at a time, is yes. better than no production at all. Or in some cases, it's better than one part, 10,000 a year, right? Or whatever the shot quantity is.
Thank you. You've just described perfectly one of the strategies that the Institute is exploring right now. And we did not discuss this beforehand.
We did not.
So I'm going to name it here. The Institute did a workshop at the end of October with a lot of large defense primes, and the sole purpose was we want to make sure as a community of practice that we can state what the demand will be for the DoD or the DOW, but the DOW does not have a way of doing that because some of it's classified. They're not going to tell you what they need, how many, they're not going to do that. So can we find a way to craft that demand signal based on defense platforms? And can we work with the primes who are building it or have contracts to build it to understand the additive content, additive manufacturing content inside each of those platforms? You can keep that to yourself, but we just need a notion of what that looks like so that we can predict, forecast demand so that we can get our supply base ready. If you're an aviation part, you have a different set of qualifications than if you're a Navy part. And if you're a Navy part, guess what? Oil and gas has the same, qualification needs that you have in the Navy. It's a maritime. It has corrosion resistance. It has all the same qualities, but the qualification regime is different. Sure. So you start to look at that supply base and say, how can we craft dual use with just focusing on the defense need, but not solely. And so we've done some of that work, some of that exploration, and we're continuing. And getting a person like yourself who understands at the program level, how do we really work this and leverage the existing systems, the DLA and all of the acquisition strategies. We know we've got a lot of bureaucracy. We know we need an overlay for this technology to take hold.
Yep.
Demand is important. We're seeing small businesses be acquired or go out of business because they cannot wait for this.
Yep.
I'm very passionate about it too. And so we're looking at different strategies, whether that's creating sort of a transactional layer with the DLA, for example, as one agency that, you know, we help those small businesses hold on or find dual uses in the meantime. So that's the kind of thing we are working on, and it sounds like you also agree that some mechanism like that is a part of the answer.
Yeah, 100%. So I will tell you, I've always been a big fan of quick wins.
Yes.
As opposed to polishing something to perfection, but never actually executing.
Right.
And so this falls into that category, the quick wins. So the department, DLA, and all the services have a very good idea today. They know exactly the categories of parts that they are challenged to supply and the commercial industrial base to source. It's called, in DLA, it's called a no bid list, for example. In the Army, it's called overage back orders.
And I've seen that DLA no bid list. It's long.
Large. And so the warfighters can't continue to wait, right? And so the way I would do it, and what I've offered to General Simmerly, is take that no bid list, identify that no bid list in terms of what falls within an advanced manufacturing envelope. What is the industry capable of producing today? Composites and metal and
Yes.
not everything has an aviation standard of qualification.
Doesn't have to, exactly.
Doesn't have to. And I would subdivide that no bid list into where, what is AM appropriate, for example,
Of course.
and use that as a basis to contract out, right? Reverse engineer, qualify, do whatever you've got to
Do it
do.
all.
And then use that as the basis to say, look, all of these hundreds and thousands of parts are AM capable. At a certain point in the life cycle, you're going to have a problem finding sources. These are the types of things that you should plan on when you do your initial sustainment life cycle planning to provision and seek IP access and materials definition and qualification standards. Buy it all up front, or at least buy options up front on the production contract. That way you're not adding to the problem, you're solving the sustainment problem, and you're fixing it for the long term.
Well,
That's what I would do.
well, good thing you're here so we can continue to work on this together, and I hope that I can count on you to support some of these things
can.
and at least help us pull apart the problems in a way that's useful and advance it. Thank you so much for this conversation, and I guess we'll see you on the flip side.
Yeah, Kimberly, great to meet
You
you.
too.
And thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.